Hello, CASK community. Welcome back to The Roar, your one-stop shop for research-related information and other happenings in the CASK community. Last episode, I asked you to send me your questions, things you wanted answered, you wanted on The Roar, you wanted to know more about, and so today I'm going to answer one of those questions, and that is, why are there multiple drugs for cerebellar degeneration in CASK? But before I do that, I want to make a strong call out about Rhythms for Rare. Have you ever attended a virtual concert? I have, but not one like this. This is CASK families and CASK family friends and networks around the world coming together for one virtual concert this Saturday, February 21st, live streamed on the Project CASK YouTube page at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, which is 6 or 7 p.m. Greenwich Time. I should have checked that. And again, live streamed at 7 p.m. Eastern Time, or again, recorded, at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. There are 18 musicians. It's an incredible diversity, many of them CASK families, all of them connected to CASK, all of them people who love and support a CASK child, individual, or family, and then we have an amazing MC, Amanda from the CASK community, and Kim Polium also will be there live as well, and there's just no reason to miss it, so come watch, let your friends and family know. It's going to be really heartwarming, but also really fun. We have some original songs in addition to classics you know and love. So this Saturday, February 21st, in between Valentine's Day and Rare Disease Day. Okay, so coming to the question at hand, why are there multiple drugs for cerebellar degeneration in CASK? And the short answer is because there are multiple things that happen when there is a CASK gene mutation that is disease-causing. And some of those happen early on in the process, and others of those are involved in sort of a cascading molecular chain that happens when there's a CASK gene mutation. And so we are looking at, or researchers are looking at multiple time points and avenues for targeting some of these effects. So multiple drugs in this case is a good sign that we're learning more, and it's very possible that we might need multiple of them. Some of them are going to be mutation specific, some of them are going to be time point specific, and others are more broadly neuroprotective, so they're not going to really address some of the cause, but some of the consequence, and that's also important, I should say. So the core issue is that, and we learned this several years ago coming out of Dr. Mukherjee's lab, that the cerebellar hypoplasia that we see in MIC-PCH, and not everybody with a CASK gene mutation has MIC-PCH, but the cerebellar hypoplasia that we see is not just a construction problem, and we still actually are learning a lot and have a lot to learn about what is happening at a molecular level in the very earliest stages of brain development with CASK, but we know that it's not just this construction problem, right? It's not just that the brain isn't developing normally. In fact, there's a lot of normal development that happens, but then there's a process of cerebellar granule cells dying off or degenerating, and they are the most abundant neurons in the brain, the cerebellar granule cells. So some of these So I'm going to talk about this in terms of upstream and downstream. Some of these are upstream interactions that are going to be happening sort of closer to the source, and some of them are part of a cascade that happens further down the river. Right? Think of a river, upstream, downstream, upstream being down at the source, and downstream being further along. So if you attended the webinar that Project CASK had with Dr. Hans-Jürgen Kreienkamp and Dr. Chang-Hui Pak in October of last year, you heard about the work that he's doing on liprin alpha. And so that's a protein that CASK binds to. And in this particular case, CASK has sort of a regulatory role. It's kind of like a chaperone for liprin alpha, and it helps in the presynaptic architecture to make sure that there's not this clumping up of liprin alpha, so that the presynaptic architecture can be built properly. This is clearly oversimplified. There's lots of things happening, but just to give you a picture, this is very upstream, and it's a regulatory role that CASK plays, and it's in part because CASK is a pseudokinase. So one of the things that Dr. Kreienkamp is looking at is, are there other kinases that can play that regulatory role of CASK when CASK is not there? And that's an active area of investigation. Another area that's a little bit further downstream, and this is a newer area in terms of like drug targeting, is, and I can't name the specific pathway at this point, there's just, because the work is very new, but it's a, broadly speaking, kind of a cellular communication pathway, and it's one that has to be in a careful balance. When it's upregulated, meaning it's overactive, too much is happening, it can cause problems, and when it's underregulated, it can cause a different set of problems. And in the case of CASK, when there's a CASK gene mutation, we see now a pretty significant upregulation of this communication pathway, and that interestingly, it may have structural implications, but it's also, as you can imagine, has a lot of downstream implications as well. So there's some inhibitors that are now, the testing is going to get underway very, very soon in that regard. So that's another slightly more upstream investigation target that's being investigated. And then I think a lot of you heard about or saw the paper from Dr. Tabuchi at Chinshu University in Japan, and he's looking at something called the JNK pathway, or the JNK pathway, the Jun N-terminal kinase, and this is a stress-activated pathway. So basically, meaning like it can trigger an alarm system in cells that then ignites kind of a process called apoptosis, or programmed cell death, and cells start dying. And you also see another process, it's kind of like an inflammatory process, for lack of a better term, but reactive oxygen species is also upregulated when this is happening. So he found in his work that inhibiting this JNK pathway with specific kinds of JNK inhibitors, or JNK inhibitors, I don't know which one's appropriate. I've heard both said as I've talked to people about this, and people have preferences. So JNK or JNK inhibitors. At the end of last year, Project CASK actually was able to connect with a leading biochemist who is really making sort of next generation JNK inhibitors, and he has shared some of these with Dr. Tabuchi for testing. So that's also underway. And then there's a whole other area of sort of maybe complementary approaches. They're not going to be targeting like the root cause, but they're targeting a lot of the consequences, and that's this particularly around like inflammation and stress reaction, and these are called neurotrophic factors. So you may have heard of BDNF, and there are others that are kind of as they sound, neuroprotective, right? So they're like soothing kind of factors, or things that can help ensure that signals that keep cells alive are functioning properly. So we know cerebellar granule cells, for example, actually have a looping signal process that keeps them alive. It's not that they just stay alive. There's actually a signal that tells them to stay alive. And so there's a whole host of work, and this is like way beyond CASK. This is, there's a lot of research looking at or has been looking at neurotrophic factors and their neuroprotective elements. J&K inhibition is also like neuroprotective in that sense, although a little bit different than what I'm talking about here, because that we know is directly implicated with CASK. And some of these other ones, we don't know necessarily if they're directly implicated with CASK, but they can stop some of this like apoptosis and that's triggered when there's CASK loss. So that's why you hear about multiple drugs. It's very likely that we're going to need multiple of them, but it's at the end of the day, it's just a great sign that there's a lot happening in this area of investigation, because it means we're understanding more. We have more opportunities to try to address some of the impacts of CASK loss, and stay tuned as we learn more about the testing of these different compounds and future work on them. Okay, so I hope I answered the question. Feel free to send some more. That was fun, and I'm happy to do my best to answer them on the Roar. Some other announcements. March Matchness, keep your ears peeled for that. This is fun. We're putting together our matching pool. This is a way for us to reach out to local businesses rather than our friends and family, so stay tuned. That's coming out really soon. Make a Splash for CASK. This is our annual community-wide peer fundraiser, and this is our third time doing it. We're really excited. We've learned a lot. And we really want to top it this year, but based on some input from families who have participated in the past or haven't been able to participate in the past because it was in August, we have moved it to May. So you can start planning now. Reach out to us. We are going to share some more information, but we really do want to kick up what we did last year, beat our goal from last year, and there's so many different ways that you can get involved. It can be a low lift, in terms of an online share, but we have some really fun ideas too for easy, I don't want to even call them events. They're not events, easy things you can do with your friends and family to raise important research funding. That also brings me to our first in-person conference. This is amazing. Our first in-person ever CASK Scientific and Family Conference is happening in November. Mark your calendars. This could be just for caregivers if you need a break. This could be, you could bring your CASK kiddo with you. You could bring other kids with you. There's tons of planning happening behind the scenes. There will be more, of course, specific information coming out, but just mark your calendars now. Save the date, early November. It's happening, people. And okay, Citizen Health. If you are not already enrolled in Citizen Health, or if you're enrolled but you haven't, you've seen a whole bunch of doctors recently and you haven't gone back in and told the portal to go get those records, go do that. This is not only open to Americans, this is open to everybody. The difference is for those in the United States, Citizen Health can go get those records for you. So it's not about citizenship. It's about, if you're in the U.S., it can go into U.S., with your permission, of course, to health systems and gather those records for you. It cannot do that outside of the United States, as you can imagine, for legal reasons. However, anybody can upload their records to Citizen Health. I understand it's a little bit bigger of a lift, but this is the biggest source of clinical data that we have on CASK, period, anywhere. It is the biggest source of clinical data. We already have over 100 and something families in there, and it's going to contribute to our digital natural history study, and this is really, really important. So please, and if you have any questions, just reach out to us. We're happy to help. It's really very easy to do. And then the last one right now is the epilepsy study. If you have a CASK kiddo and they have had an EEG, please consider participating in this study. I actually attended a meeting this weekend, and they were talking about this really interesting work that's happening on using EEG biomarkers for clinical trials, and really sophisticated work that they're doing in that regard. And this study is not just about helping us understand seizures and epilepsy in CASK-related disorders, or CASK gene disorders, but it's also about trying to find some of these biomarkers. So this could have implications for any clinical trial that's going to be coming forward for CASK. So please consider participating. It is a bit of a pain. I'm going to be honest. Getting EEG tracings, so this is not EEG reports. EEG reports are easy. You've got them in the portal. EEG tracings are the actual tracings. It is a pain to get. People are having problems getting them. I want to be honest, but it's hugely important. This is one way you can really help out. Your child does not have to have an epilepsy diagnosis. They need to have a CASK diagnosis and have had an EEG. Okay, thank you very much, everyone. And until next time, keep kicking CASK.